When I first walked into the office as the new manager, I was determined to make an impact. My name is Adam, and I believe the company needed a complete overhaul to become more efficient and profitable. As I sat in my new office, overlooking the bustling city below, I felt the surge of ambition and determination. The first step in my plan was to cut salaries and reduce overhead costs, a move that I knew would be unpopular but necessary. I called a meeting with the staff to announce the changes. The room was filled with anxious faces as I began to speak. "Good morning, everyone," I said, trying to project confidence. "As you know, the company has been facing financial difficulties. To ensure our survival and future growth, we need to make some tough decisions. Effective immediately, there will be salary cuts across the board, and bonuses and benefits will be significantly reduced." A murmur of discontent spread through the room. I could see the anger and frustration in their eyes, but I pressed on. "I understand this is difficult, but it's necessary. We need to streamline our operations and focus on efficiency. I expect everyone to step up and contribute to this effort." After the meeting, the backlash was immediate. Resignation letters began to pile up on my desk, each one a reminder of the discontent I had stirred. Those who stayed were visibly unhappy, their morale plummeting. Yet, I remained resolute. To me, this was all part of the plan. Mrs. Bennett, our HR manager, was particularly vocal about the impact of my decisions. "Adam, we need to discuss the janitor position," she said, standing in the doorway of my office one morning. "The pay is too low, and no one wants to take the job. The office is getting filthy." I looked up from my desk, unimpressed. "We can't afford to raise the salary, Mrs. Bennett. If we can't find a janitor, then the staff will just have to help out." She frowned, clearly frustrated. "But the staff is already overworked, Adam. This is going to affect productivity and morale even further." I waved her off. "We all need to make sacrifices. The cleaning will get done one way or another." As the days passed, the office indeed grew dirtier. Dust accumulated on desks, and the bathrooms became increasingly unpleasant. It was a constant topic of complaint during our meetings, but I refused to budge on the issue. One afternoon, as I stood by the window during a particularly heated meeting, I saw a woman near the garbage bins, neatly stacking cardboard boxes. She was poorly dressed, and her movements were slow and deliberate. An idea struck me. I opened the window and called out to her, but she didn't respond. After a couple more tries, I sent the security guard to fetch her. When she arrived, it became apparent that she was deaf. Her name was Estella. Despite her circumstances, she seemed composed and dignified. I decided to offer her the janitor job. "Estella," I said, using exaggerated gestures to communicate, "would you like a job here? Cleaning? We need someone." She hesitated, looking unsure, but eventually nodded in agreement. I felt a sense of accomplishment as I turned to Mrs. Bennett, who had been watching the whole scene. "This is how you hire people," I said triumphantly. Mrs. Bennett just shook her head and walked away. Estella started the next day, and despite the difficult conditions and the mockery she faced from the staff, she did her job diligently. The office began to look cleaner, but the atmosphere remained tense. I didn't care much about her background or her struggles. All that mattered was that the job was getting done. One evening, as I was finishing up some paperwork, I overheard a conversation between two staff members, Mark and Lisa, in the break room. "Can you believe Adam hired that deaf woman to be our janitor?" Mark said, his voice dripping with disdain. "He's paying her next to nothing." Lisa nodded, a smirk on her face. "Yeah, and she doesn't even know we're talking about her. It's like she's invisible." Their laughter echoed through the office, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But I quickly pushed it aside. This was business, not charity. As I sat back in my chair, I couldn't help but think about the sacrifices I was asking everyone to make. But in my mind, it was all part of the plan to turn this company around. And I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The day I hired Estella remains etched in my mind as a peculiar mix of triumph and unease. The office had reached a breaking point in terms of cleanliness. Desks were coated in dust, the trash cans overflowed, and the bathrooms were in a disgraceful state. Complaints from the staff had become a daily chorus, but I held my ground, refusing to allocate more funds for a janitor. It was during one of our tense morning meetings that I first noticed her. I stood by the window, half listening to the usual grievances about the office conditions, when I saw a woman near the garbage bins. She was carefully stacking cardboard boxes, moving with a slow but deliberate grace despite her shabby clothes. Her presence was like a quiet ripple in the chaos of our office life. Is it really that difficult to find a cleaner? I snapped, turning back to the room. I mean, we're so successful that anybody would be willing to work in a stable company like ours. Mrs. Bennett, our HR manager, looked exhausted. Her shoulders slumped as she replied, "Adam, we've been through this. The salary we're offering is too low. No one wants to take the job." I waved my hand dismissively. "Watch and learn, Mrs. Bennett. I'll show you how to hire someone." I opened the window and called out to the woman below. "Hey. Come in for a minute. I have an offer you might want to hear." She didn't respond, continuing her task without even glancing up. My annoyance flared. I turned to the security guard, who was stationed near the door. "Get that woman by the garbage bins and bring her up here. Now." A few minutes later, the guard returned with the woman. Up close, she appeared around 30, with clean hands and neatly combed hair, despite her worn-out clothes. It was clear she took care of herself as best as she could. "What's your name?" I asked, speaking slowly and enunciating each word. "Do you want a job? Cleaning the office?" She looked at me, her eyes wide and uncertain. It was then that I realized she was deaf. She pointed to her ear and shook her head. Understanding dawned on me, and I remembered that deaf people could read lips. "Do you understand what I am saying?" I asked again, exaggerating my lip movements. She nodded slowly. "Good," I said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "You'll be cleaning the office. It's not much, but it's a job. Do you want it?" Estella glanced around the room, taking in the curious and sometimes hostile stares from the staff. After a moment, she nodded in agreement. "Excellent," I said, turning to Mrs. Bennett with a triumphant smile. "See? It's not that hard." As Estella started her work, the transformation was almost immediate. She arrived early every day and meticulously cleaned every corner of the office. The difference was night and day. Despite her hard work, she was not met with kindness from her colleagues. Many mocked her behind her back, laughing at her inability to hear their cruel jokes. One afternoon, as I walked past the break room, I overheard a particularly cruel exchange between two employees, Mark and Lisa. "Have you seen the new janitor?" Mark said, chuckling. "Adam must be desperate, hiring a deaf woman." Lisa smirked. "Yeah, it's like she's invisible. We can say anything, and she won't even know." Their laughter grated on my nerves, but I chose to ignore it. I had more important matters to deal with. However, a part of me couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Estella had become a target, and I knew I was partly to blame. Later that evening, as I was packing up to leave, I noticed Estella still at work, diligently scrubbing the floors. I walked over to her, and she looked up, surprised. "Estella," I said, making sure she could see my lips. "You're doing a good job. Keep it up." She smiled, a small, appreciative gesture that somehow made the office feel a bit warmer. As I left the office that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had underestimated her. There was more to Estella than met the eye, and I was determined to find out what it was. The following week saw Estella's dedication and hard work continue, even as the mockery persisted. She never complained, never faltered. It was this quiet strength that began to intrigue me. Despite the harsh environment, she remained composed and focused, a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. One day, as I was reviewing some reports in my office, Mrs. Bennett knocked and entered without waiting for a response. She looked troubled. "Adam, we need to talk about Estella," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "What about her?" I asked, not looking up from my papers. "She's doing a great job, but the way the staff is treating her. It's not right. We need to address it." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "What do you want me to do, Mrs. Bennett?" "I can't control how people behave. But you can set the tone, Adam. If you show her some respect, maybe others will follow." Her words lingered with me long after she left. Estella's situation was a reflection of my leadership. I had created an environment where cruelty thrived, and it was up to me to change that. I decided then that I would take a closer look at Estella's work and find a way to support her, not just as a janitor but as a valued member of the team. Little did I know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would transform not only the office but also my life. As the days turned into weeks, Estella's presence in the office began to stir curiosity among the staff. Her dedication and meticulous work ethic were hard to ignore. Despite the ridicule, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. I found myself observing her more closely, intrigued by her resilience. There was something about her that seemed out of place for a mere janitor. One late afternoon, after the office had emptied out, I saw Estella still working. She was in the break room, carefully organizing supplies. As I watched her, I noticed something unusual. She was methodically sorting and categorizing items, not just cleaning. It was as if she had a system in place. My curiosity got the better of me, and I approached her. "Estella," I called out, making sure she could see my lips. She looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Adam?" I pointed to the neatly arranged supplies. This is very organized. Did you come up with this system?" She nodded, smiling slightly. "Yes, I thought it would make it easier for everyone to find what they need." I was taken aback. "You've done a great job." "Thank you." She beamed at the compliment, and I felt a pang of guilt for not acknowledging her efforts sooner. Over the next few weeks, I made it a point to check in with her more often. Each time, I discovered something new about her capabilities. She wasn't just cleaning, she was improving processes, finding ways to make the office run more smoothly. It was clear that she had skills that went far beyond her current role. One evening, I found myself working late on a particularly challenging business plan. The numbers weren't adding up, and I was growing increasingly frustrated. As I rubbed my temples in an attempt to relieve the mounting tension, I heard a soft knock on my office door. I looked up to see Estella standing there, a concerned look on her face. "Come in, Estella," I said, gesturing for her to enter. She walked in hesitantly and pointed to the papers strewn across my desk. "You look stressed. Is there something I can help with?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Unless you're a business analyst in disguise, I doubt it." She smiled faintly, then looked at the documents more closely. "May I?" she asked, pointing to the papers. I handed them to her, curious to see what she would do. To my astonishment, she quickly scanned the data and began making notes in the margins. Her speed and accuracy were impressive. "Where did you learn to do that?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She looked up, a distant look in her eyes. Before everything changed, I studied business administration. I loved it." Her words hung in the air, and I realized there was a story there, one that I needed to hear. "Would you like to tell me more about it?" I asked gently. She nodded and sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I grew up in a very poor family. My parents were often drunk, and our home was chaotic. But I loved to learn. Studying was my escape. I worked hard and managed to get into a good business school. That's where I met Connor. He was my first love." Her voice softened as she spoke of Connor, a mixture of pain and fondness in her tone. "We planned to get married, but a week before our wedding, we were in a car accident. Connor didn't make it, and I lost my hearing. His parents blamed me for everything. They said I would never amount to anything, that I'd be lucky to get a job as a janitor." I felt a lump in my throat as she recounted her story. That's terrible, Estella. I'm so sorry." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It was hard, but I had to survive. I taught myself to read lips, and I did odd jobs to get by. Eventually, I ended up here." Her story was both heartbreaking and inspiring. I realized that I had severely underestimated her. This woman, who had been through so much, possessed incredible strength and intelligence. "Estella," I said, my voice firm, "you don't belong in this position. You have so much more to offer. Would you consider taking on a different role here? Something more suited to your skills?" She looked at me, her eyes widening in surprise. "You mean, you want me to do more than just clean?" I nodded. "Yes. You're capable of so much more. I'd like to see what you can do." Her face lit up with a mix of hope and disbelief. "Thank you, Mr. Adam. I won't let you down." As she left my office that night, I felt a sense of resolve. Estella was a hidden gem, and it was time for her to shine. Little did I know, this decision would not only change her life but also transform our entire office. The next few days saw a flurry of activity. I arranged for Estella to assist with various administrative tasks, and her performance was nothing short of exceptional. She quickly gained the respect of some of her colleagues, who were impressed by her knowledge and efficiency. One afternoon, as I was walking past the break room, I overheard a conversation between Mark and Lisa. This time, their tone was different. "Did you see the report Estella put together?" Mark asked, genuinely impressed. "It's way better than anything we've done." Lisa nodded, a thoughtful look on her face. "Yeah, she's really smart. I had no idea." Their words confirmed what I already knew: Estella was destined for greater things. And as I watched her flourish in her new role, I felt a growing sense of pride. She had endured so much, yet she remained unbroken. Her strength and resilience were an inspiration to us all, and I was determined to support her every step of the way. The days ahead would bring new challenges and opportunities, but with Estella by my side, I knew we could overcome anything. Together, we were building something remarkable, and the best was yet to come. Wesley, the company's owner, had been monitoring the declining performance of our branch for a while. His frequent visits and stern expressions hinted that he wasn't pleased with the way things were going. Unbeknownst to us, he had installed hidden cameras throughout the office to uncover the real reasons behind the downturn. Wesley was determined to get to the bottom of the problem and restore the branch to its former glory. One morning, Wesley called an impromptu meeting with all the employees. His demeanor was grave, and a sense of unease settled over the room. I stood near the back, watching him intently, while Estella busied herself with her usual cleaning, unaware of the storm that was about to break. "Good morning, everyone," Wesley began, his voice calm but firm. "I have some important matters to address today. Over the past few months, this branch has seen a significant decline in performance. I've been trying to understand why, and I believe I now have the answers." The room fell silent. Everyone's eyes were glued to Wesley, anticipation and anxiety hanging in the air. "I installed cameras in the office to observe the daily operations," Wesley continued. "What I discovered was both enlightening and troubling." He paused, scanning the room. "I found that many of you have been working under increased stress and heavy workloads due to recent changes. This environment has not only affected your performance but also your morale." I shifted uncomfortably, knowing I was responsible for those changes. But Wesley wasn't done yet. "I also discovered something else," he said, his gaze falling on me. "There was a business plan presented to me recently that showed a glimmer of hope for this branch. The plan was well crafted, insightful, and detailed. I asked Adam about it, and he took credit for the work." My heart pounded in my chest as Wesley's eyes bored into mine. However, after reviewing the footage, I found that the real author of that plan was Estella. Gasps of surprise echoed around the room. Estella, who had been quietly cleaning, looked up, her face a mix of confusion and fear. "Estella, please come forward," Wesley said, his tone gentle. She hesitated for a moment before slowly walking to the front of the room, her eyes darting nervously between Wesley and the rest of us. "Estella," Wesley continued, "I've seen your dedication and the hard work you've put into this office. You've shown remarkable skills and intelligence, far beyond what was expected of you. I am truly impressed." He turned to face me, his expression hardening. "Adam, you have been exploiting your position and mistreating your staff. Taking credit for Estella's work was the final straw. Your actions have not only harmed the company but also the people who work here." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "Mr. Wesley, I can explain." "I don't need your explanation," Wesley cut me off. "Your deceit and arrogance have cost this company dearly. You're fired, effective immediately. You have 10 minutes to gather your things and leave." The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood there, stunned, as the reality of my situation sank in. The room was silent, everyone too shocked to speak. I turned and walked out, the gravity of my actions finally dawning on me. Wesley's voice brought me back to the present. "Estella, please stay. I'd like to talk with you." As I exited the office, I heard the murmur of conversations starting up again. I couldn't bear to look back. My career was over, and it was my own doing. Estella stood in front of Wesley, her heart racing. She had never expected this turn of events. "Please sit down, Estella," Wesley said kindly. She took a seat, her hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Wesley, I'm sorry if I caused any trouble." Wesley smiled warmly. "You've done nothing wrong, Estella. In fact, you've done everything right. I am amazed at your skills and your resilience. You have a remarkable talent for business, and it's time that talent is recognized." Estella looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Wesley. I just wanted to do my job well." "And you have," Wesley replied. "I'd like to offer you a promotion. How would you feel about becoming the new executive director of this branch?" Her eyes widened in shock. "Me? But I'm just a janitor." Wesley shook his head. "You're much more than that. You've proven yourself through your hard work and dedication. I believe you have what it takes to lead this branch and bring it back to its former glory." Estella's mind raced. This was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Wesley said with a smile. "I know you're capable, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way." Tears of gratitude filled Estella's eyes. "Yes, Mr. Wesley. I'll do my best." Estella's promotion to executive director marked a new beginning for our office. Her leadership style was drastically different from Adam's. She was empathetic, approachable, and genuinely interested in the well-being of her colleagues. The atmosphere in the office began to improve almost overnight. Wesley and I watched as Estella implemented her ideas. Her business plans were innovative and practical, focusing on improving efficiency without sacrificing employee morale. She introduced new training programs, streamlined processes, and most importantly, restored a sense of respect and camaraderie among the staff. One of the most significant changes was the way she handled the janitorial staff. Estella knew firsthand how difficult the job was, and she made sure they were paid fairly and treated with respect. She also implemented a policy where everyone in the office took turns helping with basic cleaning tasks, fostering a sense of community and shared responsibility. As the months passed, our branch began to thrive. Profits increased, employee turnover decreased, and the overall morale was higher than it had been in years. Estella's background in business administration was evident in the way she managed the office, and her personal experiences gave her a unique perspective that resonated with everyone. Wesley was particularly impressed. He began visiting the office more frequently, not just to check on the progress but to spend time with Estella. Their relationship blossomed into a genuine partnership, both professionally and personally. Wesley admired her strength and intelligence, and Estella respected his vision and support. Eventually, their relationship grew beyond the office. Wesley proposed to Estella, and they were married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by their friends and colleagues. It was a joyous occasion, and seeing Estella so happy was a testament to her journey from the streets to the executive boardroom. Wesley also arranged for Estella to receive a cochlear implant, a procedure that restored her hearing. The first time she heard his voice, she cried tears of joy. It was a moment of profound connection and healing for both of them. As a wedding gift, Wesley bought Estella an animal shelter. It was a dream come true for her, combining her love for animals with her business acumen. She managed the shelter with the same dedication and compassion she brought to the office, ensuring that every animal received the care and love they deserved. Their life together was filled with love and purpose. Estella continued to excel in her role as executive director, and the company thrived under her leadership. They also prepared for the arrival of their first child, a baby who would grow up surrounded by the love and warmth that defined their home. In the end, Estella's story was one of resilience, transformation, and the power of compassion. She had faced unimaginable hardships but emerged stronger, using her experiences to inspire and lead others. Her journey was a testament to the idea that no matter where you start, with determination and support, you can achieve greatness. If you like this story, please subscribe, like, click the bell, and leave a comment. Thank you in advance.